here and then pass it off to Mike to talk about the trees, since there's also engineering stuff involved in this one. So first off, I guess the applicant's applying for specimen tree removal on Lakeshore Drive for a single-family home construction. And then additionally, also with their placement of their home, they're also requesting a waiver to the wetland protective area, or you can call it a wetland setback, I guess. So those are the two applications. Kind of things that are tricky on this site are there's two wetland strips kind of surrounding the buildable area of this site. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse here, but one on the east and I guess, or pointer if that's easier. So one here and one here. Another concern on the site was the groundwater, high groundwater in the area, causing the applicant to propose a relatively high building elevation. And then other constraints are the elevations of neighboring properties, and then obviously the two specimen trees and other stands of trees on the site. So the first one is the groundwater on the site. The soil assessment report that the applicant provided indicated that the footings of the building were suggested to be almost at grade of the existing property. What they have shown is in this photo here, or this site plan here, is they're building pretty much at grade with their basement footings, and then an 8-foot basement and house on top of that, obviously. So that's where you're seeing this large grade change. The high groundwater was confirmed with the soil assessment report, like I mentioned. The report does also highlight that the basement can be lowered if other precautions in that report are implemented, like waterproofing the exterior wall and adding additional clear stone on the outside of the building foundation to allow better drainage. Second thing is the wetland protected area, which they are requesting a waiver from. The delineation report indicated a 50-foot setback on this west wetland, which is this green line here. Sorry, I should probably be using the pointer. Green line here is the 50-foot setback, and this one doesn't work anyway. And the 10-foot one on the east side is for this east wetland. The original plan here shown shows an encroachment of about 40 feet to 13.8 feet off of this west wetland, which is a pretty considerable encroachment. We would not actually be in favor of that large of an encroachment with this site plan. The alternative plan, which the applicant also provided, which I'll go to here real quickly, proposes the building outside of the 50-foot setback as well as the 10-foot setback on the east side. Also meets the side yard setback. And this one actually shows those two specimen trees as well. Staff is in favor of this placement on this plan here. And then real quickly, the last one, as you guys saw from those letters you guys had on your stand there, was the concern of the elevation with the neighboring properties. The elevations were about 2 to 5 feet higher than the adjacent lots with this proposed elevation in this building. Staff recommends a max yard grade of about 3 feet lower than this is proposed, and also at that alternative location. It's our opinion that it would also be easier to accommodate drainage with that elevation and placement, as well as fit with the grades of the neighboring lots. And we think that it would make the alternative more feasible with the wetland setbacks as great as they are. And I think I will turn it over to Mike for tree items.
Before you turn it over, could you perhaps explain to the commissioners the difference between the two wetland setbacks and why the difference in length? I went back and read the ordinance. I think I understand it, but it might be helpful.
Yeah, it is a little confusing. So basically we If there's wetlands on a site, you have to perform a wetland delineation. The delineator provides a report, and based on the quality of those wetlands, so like the species they find, stuff like that, they'll actually indicate either wide or narrow setback. Usually varies from like 10 to 75 feet, I believe. So this one's 50 because it's a higher quality wetland, and the east one is a lower quality, so that's 10. That's why they're different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
All right. So the applicant is seeking removal of 2 specimen trees on site as well. The specimen trees on site. Nicole, can you pull up that survey? So I reference a tree survey on site. 23 and 27 are the 2 trees that are requested for removal. On the site, both plans on site have an issue with those trees. So in one site, if you can scroll to the first plan that they proposed. They're basically off the front kind of stoop area in between there. Yeah. So that's where they are on the first plan, and then I think you got a image of that second alternative plan where it shows them as well. In both scenarios, because of the restrictiveness of this lot and where those wetland setbacks are, I mean, in order to put a house in here, I think both of those trees would be in jeopardy of, either major root damage or just have to be taken down. In both scenarios, one of the trees actually ends up in the footprint. I think the first scenario, both trees are in the footprint of the house. You can see here that the second tree is not in the footprint of the house, but I think that's less than 6 feet in distance from where the back of the house is right there. And there's no way that a tree that size would survive. It wouldn't have any survivability, with this proposal. So I am recommending for the removal of these 2 trees, but kind of going on what Cole said, the elevation of the lot, it's important for me to kind of go through and say that there's a lot of trees on this lot in particular. So there's only 2 specimen trees, but I want to say there's 23 trees that also are specimen species correct, but don't meet the size requirements of specimens. But the reason that staff would be in favor of that second alternative is because it does preserve, I think, those 23 trees. I think 28 through 47 would be preserved if we go with that alternative, which also would preserve that kind of back line along that wetland. We had kind of a little meandering line. Like I said, I think the 2 that are proposed, if you can see on that map, 23 and 27 are the 2 specimen trees. You can kind of see there's like a definitive line between those trees and the rest of the trees in the back that I think those have a good chance of survival if we were allowing, that second alternative. The other concern that I had leading to what Cole had said is the amount of grade change if you would allow a full exposure in this. I'm afraid that there's going to be so much grade change in this area that you would impede on that backward line of trees, even if you would allow for the second alternative. I don't know how you can make up that much grade difference in this restrictive of a lot without impacting root zones. And so that's kind of why I'm leaning towards the recommending of the second alternative plan that was submitted. But it would recommend that the 2 trees be allowed to be removed in order to fit the house on the site.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners? I've got a couple, but I don't have to always go first either. Commissioner Strelchek.
Just general questions. We've got the second preferred placement versus the first. In looking at the elevation lines, it looks like it drains back to front. Is that correct? That lot just slowly. It's relatively flat, but
it's flat, but generally drains south to north. So it'd be up on this figure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to highlight for the residents that aren't here that we did receive your letters, and I'm looking at the bulleted bold points, and I appreciate you doing so. so we have a place to go with your questions. And the biggest concerns are with drainage. So if we end up that we start on that path of design one with that elevation, I'm concerned about the drainage along with the residents, because you basically created a left to right, area in which it doesn't look like that drainage could proceed through the property as it was originally flowing off the property, and it would interfere and go into their property from there. So if we do end up on position one versus position two, I'd like to make sure that we take time to address that. Mike, are you comfortable with the two trees? I know when we end up and we're approving subdivisions and we've got a series of specimen trees on the lots, that we want to make sure that we don't just say that you can't remove it or you can remove one or two, because we really like to see what the resident or potential resident comes forward with, to see what we have and how we can best preserve what we're trying to preserve here. Are you comfortable with?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I mean, this lot is kind of an anomaly because it's really restrictive with where those wetland setbacks are, right, and there's really not a good alternative placement. So in order to give them a placement at all, we'd have to consider taking those two trees down, given where their location is in either instance.
Okay.
It is a challenging site. I think there's probably a reason it hasn't been developed to date. It's pretty constrained. I did drive by the site today on my way to Home Depot, and it is indeed pretty flat in front. The neighboring property to the south has a lot of standing water in their front yard, and it does drain. You can tell it drains slowly south to north along the front of the proposed site. So I think that's some of staff's concern with the grading, and then if you build the site up too high and you grade that out and slope it, you're invariably going to end up with dirt in that drainage way in the front yard, and in the rear yard as well. It's a postage stamp of a buildable area. Trying to figure out a way to get something done here. Commissioner Bach.
Does the option 2 better satisfy the neighbors' questions about drainage, or is it, are they?
We didn't make them go through with a grading plan for this one. The idea was going to be to decide on a site plate or a placement of the building, and then maximum elevation of that house to better accommodate the grading, basically. What we'll look at with the grading are two things, basically, that none of the drainage from the south is being impeded heading north, and then also that none of the natural drainage patterns are being changed. So, if you're going to be discharging south, whereas before it was going north, that's not acceptable. So actually, if I go to the other one, we kind of went back and forth with the applicant on just this first one to try to get something realistic, and had them put in a swale surrounding this site. So basically any of that water that's coming from south to north is going to be captured by that swale and discharged around to to those wetland areas, which are basically where the water goes right now anyway. So that's kind of what we'll be looking for on the additional drainage plan.
Does the applicant have anything they'd like to add? Yeah, get uncomfortably close.
Test. Does this one work?
There you go.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mayor and Plan Commission, for having us this evening. We're happy to be here and happy to finally be here after many conversations with the Plan Commission team and many conversations. So we're glad to finally be here to present to you. To my right is Mr. Pete Lane from Tim O'Brien Homes. Also here is the applicant, Mr. Lance Garrett. Behind me is Pete's colleague, Laura Dressinger from Tim O'Brien Homes, and also Miss Elizabeth Garrett, the applicant as well. So we got the whole team here to answer any questions you got. So with that being said, there was a lot of discussion before about the very thorough review of all the issues at hand. Just to kind of take it a step back, in our opinion, there's really two issues here. One is the removal of the 2 specimen trees, and the second issue is the placement of the home. So we're basically in agreement with staff here that the 2 trees should be removed. And there's really no place to place the home on the lot without the 2 trees coming down. If the footprint's not directly over the 2 trees, it's right next to it, so the roots will basically kill the tree. So we're in agreement with staff, so as long as the Plan Commission's theoretically on board with that, that should be probably the lesser of the 2 issues. The larger issue, which is coming to light here, is where to place the home on the property. And as staff brought this slide before, this lot is very, very restrictive on where you can place the home. There's the wetlands on the west side of the lot and also on the east side of the lot. So no matter where you go, there are going to be issues with setbacks. You go too far to the left, to the west, too far to the east, too far to the south. So it's got to be placed somewhere within that home. And the reason why we pushed it, or we have the house set forth on the first alternative to the left, Pete Lang from Tim O'Brien Homes can talk about the grading and the drainage and why we think that's the best for the wetlands themselves and the neighbors to the south and to the north. But before I pass it over to Pete Lang, I just want to say that I would urge the Plan Commission to, I guess, give credit to Mr. and Mrs. Lanscarrett for what I would call doing the right thing. These trees, what they've done, they've put a decent amount of resources into hiring a tree surveyor, getting the delineation report. They've got approval from the DNR to put a driveway through the wetlands. They've hired counsel. They've talked to Tim O'Brien Homes. They've done a significant amount of research and effort, and they put a lot of resources into this and working with the plan staff on where to place a home. And we think that the first alternative is the best for, I guess, the neighborhood. So with that being said, Pete has a couple of comments regarding the drainage and why the first alternative is the best for this lot.
Sure, thanks, Alex. Yeah, the primary consideration, this is a complex of constraints, so we're trying to fit into a whole bunch of limiting factors. The primary consideration for us as a home builder is the observed groundwater elevation on the site that says the footings for the basement are going to go essentially about a foot into the ground as it is. And we see this with increasing frequency on building sites where essentially you kind of scratch the surface, put your basement in, put your house on top, and then you have to fill around the building to create driveway and yard. Looking at the rear of the building being a full walkout exposure says we don't do any filling on that side, essentially. As you can see, the contour lines that surround the building exist around the front, around the left and right side, and there really are not additional contours in the rear. The reason for sort of crowding the wetland, I guess, this couldn't be, I guess, more backwards in that the west wetland needs 50-foot setback and the east one needs 10, and we're kind of asking to flip those, but the front of the building is where a significant amount of fill will be created in order to get a driveway up to the building, in order to get people up to the front door. We know that significant fill will happen there. We've lowered the garage elevation with respect to the first floor by 4 feet so that that driveway is not as steep, and again, not as much fill is required underneath it. That necessitates then the resident walks through the fire door into their garage, gets on a landing and steps down 5 or 6 steps to their garage floor elevation. We also are tapering the grade down to the right of the building so that essentially that front yard is about 4 feet below the first floor elevation in the front to try to minimize the amount of that fill. That said, if you look at the contours that kind of cross the driveway, 696, 695, 432, etc., moving the building to the east is going to compress those contours so that they're much more like the ones that you can see up against that east wetland, steepening the driveway and having us conduct fill activities closer and closer to a delineated wetland. Because we're not planning fill activities on the west side of the building, that's the reason for placement closer to the west wetland, we expect to disturb little grade on that side. However, we've got to build up the front yard. Pushing the home into the ground is pushing the basement into the water table. And anybody that watched the news in September of this year, water goes into basements. And so we're very cautious to avoid that situation wherever possible. Yes, our soils engineers report said, well, you can sort of push the envelope on that stuff. You can go lower and you can waterproof this, that, and the other thing. Homes with those measures were somewhat indiscriminately impacted during the weather events we had in September. So we're super reticent to do that if we don't have to. And that's why the idea of a lot of fill being placed around the home, primarily in the front yard. Let's not put any in the back or the side of the right side, but we got to keep that basement up out of the water table. So that's, I guess, sort of the logic that's got us putting the home where we're proposing it.
So thank you to the commission for letting us come in today and talk about our project. A couple other notes that I just wanted to add to this project that I don't think have already been mentioned. One is that we're building a finished basement to be able to accommodate our family. So it's very important to us that we're able to have a dry basement. We've paid for some extra things to help to ensure that. So we have a larger crock that's being installed than normal. And there's other things that we're paying for to help keep the basement dry. But it's really because we're putting a significant amount of money into finishing the basement right from the start. My son will be in the basement. We have a guest bedroom and an office in the basement. So it's really important to us that we're able to keep that dry. The other thing, the other day I came and walked the property and went and looked at the west wetlands and the east wetlands. And I can tell you that my feet got wet in the east wetlands. They didn't get wet in the west wetlands. So I'm not an environmental engineer. I don't know how they come up with the quality gradings of the wetlands. But I did take photos. And if any of us were to go walk the property now in the dark, you would notice that the west wetlands don't appear to actually be wetlands, where clearly the east wetlands are actual wetlands. As you move north on the property in the west wetlands, the neighbor to the north has an area just north of our west wetlands that very much looks like wetlands. But again, as the everything flows from the south to the north, it's my opinion that I think that the further north you go, the higher quality the wetlands become on the west side of the property. The last thing that I'll say is that we've been back and forth quite a bit coming up with the plans for this property. We had signed off on building the home with a partial exposure. We were ready to go. Everything was finished. But based on the engineering request or the recommendation by Tim O'Brien Homes, they said based on the high water levels that we're recommending that there be an exposed basement. We didn't require it. We didn't demand it. Nothing like that. We wanted to be able to build a house with a basement that was able to stay dry. It was their recommendation that this is how the home be built. The other aspect of this is that as we were going back and forth looking at this proposed location and option number 2, I said to Pete, which of those versions do you feel as objectively as possible can minimize issues with water and it is just best for the property and for the neighbors? And he felt that this location that we're proposing helps to do that. As you can see, there's more area for the water to run off and run off more slowly than if you try to move the house further east. I know I said that was the last thing, but there's one more thing. We also went through a change because we've been in this process for so long. We went through a change in our primary contact with Tim O'Brien Homes. We've been working on this project for a year now. So we went from one person to now getting to work with Pete. During that change, there was some items that, because we were so focused on the land, we weren't able to get Pete up to speed on in terms of what we've agreed on already with Tim O'Brien Homes for the build for the house. This plan is based on having an 8-foot height for the basement. The actual agreed upon plan that we have is for a 10-foot basement. So that's another factor as well. I think we also have a 3D version that we sent over to Cole, if you have that available, to be able to show for the commission, showing where there's actually these higher levels. As you can see, it's really just primarily by the front door there versus being the entire property. You have that available that you can show?
Okay, got that one.
Sidewalk running up semicircular contours are. That's the area with the latest amount. There's a drop off 4 feet to that right corner. The garage itself drops all at once within the structure of the building. So yeah, I've got kind of a 3D rendering that shows not when everybody says, oh, you're going to put your footings at grade and build your yard up around the house, people picture kind of a volcano effect, right? And then that immediately creates the impression, well, you're going to be shedding water in all directions toward all the neighbors. By lowering the garage and lowering that right corner of the building, really the steepest slope in this front yard is going to be right there adjacent to the building. Rendering.
It's Cole McGraw. I'll send it to you here so you have it.
I can't access my email.
Commissioner Stoker.
So I have a plethora of questions here. First off, you asked me with the basement. Is this going to be an 8-foot tall basement or a 10-foot tall basement?
The agreed upon plan is 10 feet.
What are we looking at here?
That's 8.
Okay. All right. I again, there's a lot going on here. I understand conceptually everything that's going on here. You throw 2 more feet on here, we need to see that. I can't approve this tonight without seeing that. I need to see it and understand it. I want to look at the grading plan. But before we get to all that, I need to understand our position on the wetland. Are we gonna? Is this an option or is this not an option? And I don't know if we can't. To me, if this isn't an option, then we have to look at the other one altogether. So what's your appetite for this location? I agree that this is probably the better location, but I don't understand the wetlands, how good this wetland is on the east versus the west. So if this isn't an option, then we got to go to Plan B.
Sure. Planning Commission has in the past approved waivers to the wetland setback, a few in the past year even. Our thought was that this much of an encroachment we would not be in favor of. Typically we've only seen, I'm just going to throw out like a third reduction in the setback. And usually we do that in, we would require like a no-mow buffer or long grass to sort of pre-treat that runoff before it gets to the wetland. In their case, they're already actually triggering a green infrastructure plan, so their runoff could be discharged to those devices that they already have to install, and then it's kind of pre-treated already going into the wetlands. So my opinion is that it's a very big change from what we have in our ordinance, and I'm not comfortable with that big of a reduction.
What is your position about somewhere in between the two, pulling the house forward some, maybe not all the way?
Yeah.
Is that an option? I guess the 10-foot basement blows my mind. I'm struggling to understand that. I live in a home in Mequon that I went through standing water. I'm 4 feet. I got 3 commercial grade sump pump cracks and a whole house generator. I've got a very fancy finished basement, waterproofed, everything you would need to do to make this work going through the water. It can be done. Yeah, certainly there's costs in multiple sump pump cracks, not just one big crack. I would say 2 or 3. I have 3 cracks with 6 pumps. And I'll tell you, they run every 10 seconds in the spring. Got to have a whole house generator. Those of us that live in Mequon know the power goes out a lot in Mequon. Don't know why, but it does, especially West Mequon where I am. That generator has saved me 30 times in the last 4 years. So if you're talking a 10-foot basement, and I don't see retaining walls on here, without retaining walls, I don't know how you can think you can do this drainage.
So to address your question, Pete and I discovered this about 3 days ago. And it was during the transition between my working with another person, her being let go, she's not with Tim O'Brien anymore, and working with Pete. We've been so focused on the placement and other things, I didn't notice until a few days ago that this was an error. And I wanted to be honest and upfront about it. I don't want you to feel like I'm just springing this on you, but I do want to let you know.
But are you going to build a home without a 10-foot basement? Are you okay with a 9-foot basement? Or is an 8-foot doable? Is it doable? I guess that's.
So I figured that in our discussions that would be something that we would discuss here today. Our strong preference is to build the home as it's been planned. And I think in conversations with Pete, there's ways that hopefully we can do that and prevent water from running off into the neighbors' properties. I'd also show, if you look, the high point on the property is 693.2, which is on kind of the north and east side of the house. 699 is the highest point that they're putting in fill, which is 5.8 feet above the existing grade. To build it,
but that's assuming you're not going to change it when you go to a 10-foot
with an 8-foot basement. Yep. But that's really the high point. From there, it definitely goes down pretty dramatically from there. And as we're requesting, when we talk about the location of the house, further west we're able to put it, the more the less the slope will be. And so, in terms of moving the house east, we've had discussions on that. I think that is room for negotiation on that to better observe the setbacks on the west wetlands. But again, our interest is trying to make sure that we minimize water going where it doesn't want to go or where no one wants it to go. And so having as gradual slope as possible, having the house as west as possible helps to ensure that.
Well, I'm going to come out and state that I have no issue whatsoever that Tim O'Brien Homes is going to make this work for you, and you're going to have a dry basement, and they're going to do everything in their power. From my perspective, sitting on the Planning Commission, we have to agree upon house location. I don't think you're going to get this commission to agree to this location, given the fact that staff is strongly against being 13 feet off that wetland. Again, I'm a home builder. I don't understand wetlands. I'm not that guy. I understand what being 13 feet off a wetland is, though. It's my opinion, especially with a 10-foot basement, you are trying to do a lot in a very skinny area here. My suggestion would be to go into the water. I know that's probably a scary proposition to you. I listen to some pumps run in March every 10 to 12 seconds. I get it. You got to have multiple pumps. I've insulated mine so I don't hear them. Actually, it's more scary when I don't hear them, to be honest with you. But that's the reality. As a home builder, I realize that. When I go to sell my house, people are going to say, why you got all these sump pumps? Well, because I've got high static groundwater. That's what it is. Never had water in my basement since I've lived there 7 years. To really understand this, we need to know exactly where the house is going to be, whether that's a compromise tonight. I need to see a grading plan working with the exact location for me to approve this. And again, I want to do everything I can to help you get your house and your dream house on here, and you are working with an extremely challenging lot. I get that. But I'm going to struggle giving you a blessing tonight without seeing where it's really going to be and what that grading plan is going to look like at that location. And again, I would encourage reconsider a 9-foot basement, anything you can take out of the height here. And I know 8-foot, I don't know how tall you are, but 8-foot basements, I know they're not great for resale.
I'm 10 feet tall.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Again, I'm going to struggle to really approve it unless we can get an agreement upon this commission that we're going to approve this location and this grading plan. Then I might be able to give you my support this evening, but my gut is telling me we're probably not going to be able to agree upon this location.
What would the commission be comfortable with in Cole in terms of the setback from the west wetlands? Is there a number that you're looking for to feel more comfortable with the setback?
I would. One of the most common setbacks we have in the city, like there's the 50-foot, that's the high quality, and then the next one down is the 30-foot. I would be comfortable if it works with the 30-foot and the additional green infrastructure or no buffer, whatever you guys choose for that, for pre-treatment before that drainage enters the wetland.
Yeah, and when we looked at this and talked through the scenario, I think the furthest that Pete felt comfortable moving the house to the east and still being able to have a reasonable grade was an additional 20 feet, which would bring us to 23 feet.
33.
You'd be at 33, so you'd be 3 feet
You're
beyond.
13 now. Yeah.
The driveway slope, the front yard slope of that added fill to the west of the east wetlands is going to be steeper there. That's going to sharpen that front yard grade, but I roughly calculated that we could probably shove about 20 more feet.
You've obviously already conceded to dropping the garage, having 5 steps from the garage into the house. If you drop the garage another 6 inches, one of the questions I have is how are you getting from the driveway up to the front door? You're just going to have steps
Yes.
up? So I mean, you know, the 20 feet you might be able to make up, keep the grade on the right the same by just going down another 6 inches. Yes, it's another step or potentially 2, which I know isn't an ideal situation. You may not even have room in the garage to add that many more steps. I don't know that without seeing the plan. But you've already come to the fact that you're going up and down stairs to get out of your house every time. Another step or 2 might, by losing the distance, you might be able to make that up with one more step from the garage into the house and actually from your driveway up to the front door. So I would be much more comfortable with you being 25 or 30 feet off that wetland than 13. And I'm not even a wetland guy. Trust me. I've been in the same fight with Mequon with you guys, but the reality is 13 feet is crazy close.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
I don't know what the rest of the commission's opinion is. I'll let them talk about it. I think, and I'm sure you're in a hurry here, I would be willing to make a motion at some point, potentially, assuming the commission's good, that if staff is okay with what you present moving forward, that you're 30 feet away, that I could not see it coming back, but there may be other commissioners that may want to see it again. So, okay, I'll shut up for a while and let everyone else talk.
Yeah, and thank you for acknowledging that we've done numerous things to try to minimize the impact.
Yep.
We did not just come up with a plan to say, let's just do whatever's perfect for us and to heck with anyone else. Like, there's a lot of things that we've done here.
You've thought through it. I know it. So.
Yeah, I agree. This is going to be residential someday, somehow. We got to find the right way to do it. And maybe we can jockey the position around, but after observing it today, I know we think the report says the wetlands of the west are higher quality, but it is actually more wet up front to the east. It's very wet.
There's a stream that runs through.
Correct.
I have photos on my phone. There's a
small reservoir in the neighbor's yard to the south, and a culvert that drains to the north. And what we can't do is disturb that. So I know the wetland might have better grass growing in it, and it's the species are
Pretty much, I think.
higher value and more interesting than the ones in the east, hence the greater value. So if 13 feet's a little close, but I think we can barter on that 50 foot and find the right spot to put it to minimize the impact. Commissioner Strelchak.
I agree with what Commissioner Stoker said, and with him being a builder, he really put it pretty eloquently. Like, his goal is to say yes and why, to make sure that it works. And unfortunately, like, sometimes when you're building a home, like, I don't know that 10-foot basement's going to work out in this case. It might not be it's a great plan, but it might not fit the lot. And as a home builder, you definitely go through that. I sold new construction for a while. So I get it, and I understand the hurdles, and I've been through the hurdles with customers in the past. So, I personally would like to see the grading plan. There's enough concern about the wetlands and the drainage for the residents. We've also got a couple letters here just with some cursory basic questions on, like, how does this work and things like that. Me personally, I'd like to see this come back with an agreed on plan, with a grading plan, and then I'd like staff to specifically address just the drainage questions, whether it seems cursory for you and your everyday business and it's assumed to you. It's a really good peace of mind for the people that are taking the time to write these letters and ask these questions, that we just kind of go over them item for item, just to kind of highlight for residential knowledge. Drainage is taken into an account. Engineering is part of the study. There is a reasonable assurance that this will work. If it's something that would fail, I don't know that city staff would approve it. And I also know that you've got a quality builder here, which doesn't want it to fail either. And the resident seems like a pretty great guy in initial meeting. So to get this neighbor in with a quality home that doesn't flood your yards would be a really great thing. So My preference is to see this come back, just to summarize what I said earlier. I don't know what you have for schedule, like when are you guys hoping to dig, you know?
Yeah, so we've been delayed significantly already. We were supposed to be in front of the Planning Commission back in October. And I'd also share that we've been hit with increased costs. So in order for us to build the home that we had planned that would have been built if we'd been able to come to the October Planning Commission, in order for us to build that now, we have to pay $26,000 more than what was fully agreed upon due to the increase in costs for materials. So
I empathize with you, but I'm going to share with you that as it stands right here before me, the one that you're asking for without the staff recommendations, a no vote for me tonight. It's probably a no vote for another builder. And then the rest of the commission typically goes with what us two kind of lead when it comes with building their own minds and opinions, and they'll share that accordingly. But I don't see you, a table might be in your best interest, even though it might cost a little more to get the home kind of close to what you want.
So what is it that we need to discuss to be able to come to an agreement today? Is it that the representation that we're showing here isn't in the location that we're agreeing to with the setbacks?
Not in the location. I want the drainage addressed for the neighbors for the grading plan per Commissioner Stoker's request as well.
I think have we addressed the drainage already?
Not with the home being moved. I want to see what that would look like.
Okay. So to me, the difference if moving the house east would be that the grade lines would be closer to each other, but otherwise essentially the same. So that we're looking at a change in the grade coming off of the house.
Well, unless you change the height of the basement or you drop the garage further, that would have an impact.
I think, there's a lot conceptually going on. We're moving the house. If the basement's really 10 feet, not 8, then we're mentally adding 2 feet to everything that's on the paper. And the staff report staff's already recommending, I think, a maximum elevation of 697 feet, which is roughly the same elevation of the house just to the south. Right. When you look at the grading lines that run through it on Ozaki GIS, I spent some time looking at GIS last night. So that'd be a 5-foot difference. So you could still have the 10-foot basement, but now it's, instead of that grade, it's 5 feet into the soil.
Yep. Well, that's another decision that they're going to have to make. If staff's not going to recommend that, that may be something that I disagree with. I think it is buildable without going in the ground. I understand the neighbors' concerns when all of a sudden you're building a house, especially with a 10-foot basement, at the grade that it's very disturbing for a neighbor. You've been involved in this for a year. You understand it. Most of the people on this commission probably don't even understand.
Sure.
It's very hard to understand something like this.
Yeah.
The reality is, when I built my house, how many neighbors called Jack because I was 4 feet out of the ground? What's going on? Why are they building this house 4 feet above the road? This is crazy.
Yeah.
So a lot of people get a lot of concern. There's drainage concerns to begin with. I think it's fair. I would strongly recommend considering still going in the ground. If you don't, I would like to see the ultimate location with the grading plan per the 8 or 9 or 10-foot basement, whatever it is you decide to do, with the garage drop 4 feet, 4.5 feet, whatever it is you're really going to do. I'd like to see it, and I'd like to see it for myself. I initially I'm changing my mind now. I would actually like to see it rather than letting staff handle it. If staff is going to come down and say, we are not going to allow this footing elevation to be anything lower or higher than this, then that's a topic we should probably get through before we send them on their way tonight. Are we going to make them go into the ground, or I would be comfortable knowing it's Tim O'Brien and knowing they're going to do it properly. If they can show us that it's going to work with the 8, 9, 10-foot basement without going into the ground, I'd be comfortable. We'd still need to address the homeowners to the north and south, their concerns, and I think that's fair to them that we would answer their questions. It can be done either way.
I do think that would be helpful. I mean, if you guys do decide to table, I mean, just working through without knowing what the yard grade is going to be much more difficult if we don't kind of.
So we have another meeting in December, but it's a little quicker turn than normal, but you would have about a week to get a revised plan. I think we're shooting for like a 30-foot setback off the back. And you can tell if you just look at the elevations on GIS, there's maybe 3 feet of pitch in the backyard south to north. So that flows better and stays dry at the front. It's less than a foot. It's really slow.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the lot. I have
Yeah.
a friend that lives 3 lots north of this, so I'm familiar with it. And I empathize with your cost. I would ask that hopefully Tim O'Brien can help out where they can, keeping your costs the same. But at the end of the day, I think it's a bad precedent for us to sit up here and say we're just going to allow someone to be 13 feet. I've tried 5 times on Ranch Court to get the wetland setbacks reduced to those types of distance. I've been declined every single time. So we're not picking on you. It's just
no, I get it.
It's Mequon,
So,
and I'm okay with that.
so it sounds like what we're able to agree on is 30 feet off of the west wetlands and removing the trees, based on that location with just the house moving east. Everybody seems to be okay with that without a formal vote. And then all that's left is a rendering showing the elevations or the grade off of the house. And that would be what we would just be discussing in December.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment.
Okay.
And with those elevations of the grading, some indication that the drainage won't be disturbed. I mean, there's a distinct path around the east side, and then everything on the west kind of goes south to north and maybe just a little bit west while it's moving.
Can we show the 3D rendering? Cole, did you get that in your email?
I don't have access to email on this.
Oh. Is there any way that we can show that? Because I think it's helpful just knowing that, the increase in elevation is just really primarily by the front door.
I don't think we can on here.
I would certainly
I think-
strongly recommend in a resubmittal providing that, because that would be good for the neighbors to see.
Yeah, sounds like this will come back, and at that time, definitely let's have that view. Because I think it would help everyone digest it. It's always better in 3D rather than 2D. Their emotion.
The footing questions, did we answer that?
Sorry?
Did we answer the footing questions by staff?
I'm looking at you, Cole, but
What would you guys like to see out of if we restrict it to yard grade, then they can make the decision about the basement height. I recommended in our report 697 for a yard grade, whereas this one shows 700 with the 8-foot basement. Any thoughts? So it's about 3 feet lower than what's shown.
About 3 feet, assuming it stays at 700.
Yeah.
if it were me, I would struggle with a 10-foot basement at grade. I know I'm sorry to say that. It kills me to say that, but that's a lot on this lot. I mean, it's an 8-foot's one thing, maybe a compromise at 9 foot, but I really have to go back to staff.
Is it possible that we could look at a 9-foot and then maybe able to leave today with something that we can work with?
I'm certainly more comfortable with 9 than 10. So, and I understand your desire for a 9-foot basement, especially if you've got living space and an office down there. I understand.
Yeah, there's 2,200 square feet of finished area in the basement. So our current home, the basement's finished at 8 feet, and it's kind of tight. 9 feet we could live with for sure. I just spoke with Pete here just for a minute. There's concern on the home builder side about whether we can delay any further. I had been told previously that we have to build in 2022. So I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place and trying to come up with something that works for the commission, for the home builders, for our neighbors, for ourselves.
Yeah, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. You could look at an 8-foot basement with 4 trusses and essentially have your 9-foot because you don't have a beam anymore. So there's things that can be done. Again, I know you're looking for a way to get out of this. I don't see it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to approve this tonight without seeing something else. So that's my opinion. I don't know what the rest of the commission's opinion is. You're probably going to need to come back in December. And my guess is if you can present to us something with the wetlands, with the house shifted, and you can again present drained, something like this where we can see that the drainage is going to work and not dump water to the north and the south, I think you'll probably get approved at that point. That's assuming Cole's going to be okay with them building at grade.
On approval of a revised grading plan with the rear of the building 30 feet off the west wetland.
Was that a question? I didn't hear the first part. I'm sorry.
Well, conditioned upon staff review of a revised grading plan with the building 30 feet off the west wetland.
I would be much more comfortable if we saw a grading plan at Planning Commission with final house grade, basically.
So I think what we're asking for is a conditional approval.
I would be okay with it. I would have no problem running into the city to look at it when I came in if that's beneficial. But we've got 9 other commissioners here, so I got to be done talking.
What's the nature of the request? It's you asking for a conditional approval,
So
with
yeah,
a condition being that staff reviews the final product showing the 30-foot setback in the rear. And what else are we asking staff to?
We want to understand we want to see 8 or 9 or 10 foot basement. We want to understand the grading associated with those.
And a detailed grading plan with that.
I don't know what the benefit is if we're coming back in December. That's so close. What's the benefit of a conditional approval? There seems to be lots of questions.
Well, the conditional approval would allow staff to
go
review that. If we think that's where we're headed, then conditional approval would, assuming it's per staff's interpretation of what we're asking for, they would have the authority to sign off on it then. And if they didn't think they could sign off on it, then they would just park it back here in December anyway. But it would afford the potential to maybe skip another cycle in front of the commission.
And December doesn't seem far off. We've been working on this for quite a while, and December makes a big difference for us. So anything that we can do, I'm not trying to pressure or anything. I mean, just like full transparency, that there's been a lot of delays, and we're in a tough spot if we can't get this approved very soon, or something approved.
Any other questions from the commission, or is there a motion? Commissioner Jensis.
Quick question for staff. Cole, what would you need, maybe you've answered this and I just didn't hear it, but what would you need to get yourself comfortable you could report back to the plan commission, yes, this footprint, this location can work? I think that as much as anything, staff needs to be comfortable. So if you can clarify that for us, maybe that helps us get to a motion.
Yeah, I guess to clarify, just we would basically just need to see an updated one of these grading plans, site plans with updated grades. Obviously, the only thing that I would say we would struggle with on our end is just not having the full understanding of how maybe the commission feels about the height and how it fits with other properties. I mean, if drainage could work with this as it is. It's just how it ties into those neighboring properties and how that might look. I would say that would be my main concern if when reviewing at staff level, if that makes sense.
So the house to the south is at 697 now. The house to the north and a little bit to the east is like 695.
Ish. 695 to the north, 698 to the south are the.
Yeah, there was one that was higher, for sure.
Really talking about exceeding those neighboring elevations just in the vicinity of the front entry. From a yard perspective, is my yard towering above the neighbors?
I saw someone raise their hand in back, and we can, well, public input is always welcome. Normally you'd fill out a comment card, but if you'd like, you can come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Kimberly Pons, 12323 North Lake Shore Drive. I'm the south property owner. I have submitted you a letter and I have some more comments based on what I've heard today. So I know Lance and his wife have been working very hard to get this done. And I know they've put in significant resources into this project, but we've put in significant resources on our properties as well. And I'm very concerned, when I look at those grading lines on this side, my driveway is right there and my driveway is level with their property. So I don't see how you that garage is raised from grade 4 feet, 5 feet. I'm not sure anymore. There's less than 20 feet probably between our driveways, maybe 30. I don't see how my property is protected. That's what I'm concerned about. And Mayor, you said you drove by my property. What you saw, that drainage pond, I know I've indicated it's more than double the size it was 2 years ago because we've lost all the ash trees. But if you walked up my driveway, you would see that land is wet too, in front of where my driveway is paved. So that's what I'm concerned about. I can't absorb any more water on my property, and I don't want an ice rink for a driveway in the winter. So I'm very concerned about that. Since they're at the same level. And I'm kind of looking at this plan. There's risk. I read the report. There's risk that, going below grade, but it seems to me this plan is shifting the risk from you to the neighbors.
Well, the grading plan shows that the water's not coming onto your lot.
Okay.
Understand?
Maybe I can't read it.
I understand.
I can see where the lines are, and I can stand on my driveway and I look. I'm like, okay, what's
Right. The way it's drawn right now, you don't have to worry about that.
What
I'm not in it. The way it's drawn right now, you don't have to worry about that. I'm not an engineer, but I understand grading plans.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking. I want to see with the house where it's really going to be located. I want to see a new grading plan for that exact reason.
Okay. Because my driveway, if you scroll
understood.
down to where the trees.
Yep.
My driveway is like right there. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Yeah, and then you can see the garage is at 696 and the existing grade is 693.2. So it's 2.8 feet higher. So. Yeah, and the swales, and then we've also agreed with the environmental engineer and I had been emailing with Kimberly to try to put apparently it's a rain garden, something like that. I'd offered to Kimberly that we would work with her and put it in a location that's as preferential to her and her water concerns as possible, based on whatever the engineer recommends. So if that is on the southwest side or the south, wherever it needs to be to minimize her concerns, we're happy to put it there.
Is there a motion?
I'd like to table this. There's too many moving parts for me tonight to vote yes for something. I'm going to make a motion to table. Second.
There's a motion and a second. That's a non-debatable motion.
Is there something we can discuss around the basement height? That sounds like it's kind of a sticking point.
Motion's been made. I think there's too many moving parts for me there's too much to legislate on the fly tonight to get the details worked out with the drainage concerns and your building height. And I want to make sure you have the home that you want, that staff agrees to, and that the neighbors are comfortable with. I can't accomplish all three with the discussion tonight, and that's why I made the motion to table. So I apologize to you. I know it's hard, but.
Got a motion and a second, and we're really not even supposed to debate the motion to table. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yes.
Commissioner Gentis.
No.
Commissioner Hawley.
Yes.
Commissioner Bach.
Aye.
Commissioner Stoker.
No.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Yes.
Mayor Nurbin.
No.
Sorry, what does that mean?
Well, how many votes we have?
3 no, 4 yes.
So 4 to table, 3 to
The vote
not
passes
table.
to table.
So it passes. Items tabled. On to our next item. I hope to see you again in December.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to be clear for the record, can you please clarify one particular, the exact deliverables that we should return to you, so we're giving you exactly what the Plan Commission wants?
So a revised site plan showing, I think, no more than a 30-foot setback on the west wetland with more detailed drainage and grading plan to address the concerns of their surrounding properties. And if that involves adjusting heights of things and maybe putting the building into the ground to accomplish that, then that would be part of the plan.
Do we have a itemized list of the concerns, kind of moving parts from neighbors, et cetera, and in what form would be acceptable evidence to mitigate or at least address those concerns satisfactorily? Want to know what those requirements are.
Well, the location of the building on the pad.
Got it.
Yep. Revised grading plan with sufficient detail to...
Same level of detail as what we supplied?
Are we looking for more or less detail? I'm looking to someone who's an experienced home builder.
More is always better, but I'm fine. I was fine with what you provided. I would, obviously I want to know if it's going to be an 8 or a 9 or a 10-foot basement, but I was fine with the detail. Visually, it worked. It worked for me. We just were too close to the rear wetland, rear wetland. So what you provided for me visually works, but ultimately it's up to staff. They're ultimately going to be the ones that are responsible to answer these questions, which again, clearly on the south lot line, we were not dumping water into her lot. I can see that. They're the ones who have to sign off on that.
Okay.
They're the engineers.
Could we come with maybe a 9-foot and a 10-foot option, show you both, and discuss those? Does that work for the commission?
I think that's fine as long as there's enough detail.
We want to come with as much info as we can so that there can be a discussion and that we can leave in December with something that's agreed on.
That's fair. Yep. Great. Thank you. Next item is Prodigy Lighting and Sign LLC for Mequon, the Mequon Mobile. This applicant is seeking a minor request approval to allow for a sign waiver to allow for structures to be constructed around the gas pumps for the property located at 11210 Northport Washington Road. Lori, are you on for this one?
I am on. Thank you. As you said, this is a proposal that includes painting the convenience store north and south elevation existing convenience store canopies, which, sorry, Cole took the laser pointer, so let me see if I can kind of point it out here with that little cursor there. Thank you. Awesome. When planning goes correct. So it's right through there. So they're also going to be doing an installation of decorative structures around the gas pumps and canopy. The proposed structures will be used for display of additional signage, and then no changes were proposed for the car wash and associated structures. There are 4 types of red decorated structures proposed for the areas under the gas canopy. One of them is the wave, which is this right here. So there's 4 of those over 6 of the pumps. There's also blades, which you can make out right there and there. There's going to be 4 of those. A koala bear, which I love the name of. It's just these little things that are 3-sided and they go along the side of the canopy post. There's 6 of those, and then a number wedge, which will be attached to each canopy post. Each structure has multiple locations designated for signage. In total, there are 62 new signage locations proposed, totaling over 137 square feet of signage. Staff feels that the proposed structures and change in canopy color will add visual interest to the site. However, staff has several concerns about the number of proposed signage associated with the proposal, the color choice of the canopy, which was proposed as red, and lack of proposed changes to the car wash's associated structures. Right now, the car wash structures are yellow, so that's not really keeping in with the theme. Staff recommends that the koala structure not be approved and the signage to be limited to the following: 2 1.84 square feet logo areas located on top of each wave, 2 1.84 square feet logo areas located on the largest space of each blade, Each wedge may hold 3 numbered decals to indicate the fuel pump number. While the proposed color changes to the convenience store canopies will match the red of the proposed structures, staff feels that this might be too much red for the site, a little too flashy, and therefore staff recommends that the color match the blue found in the ExxonMobil logo. The existing car wash, pace center, and touch-free car wash canopy, we would like to recommend that these be also painted blue to match the convenience store canopy and ExxonMobil logo. In addition, staff is recommending an easement along the west property line and corner of Mequon Road and Port Washington Road to allow for future improvements as part of the Port Washington Streetscape project, which is in its very early phases. Mayor?
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? There's a lot going on this item, but is there anyone here from representing the applicant? Please come up and. You can. Are you the applicant or representing the applicant?
I'm the sign vendor.
Okay, please take a seat. You don't have to sit at the podium. Yeah, you get to sit down. Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Bach.
Are you okay with staff recommendations? Are you okay with the staff recommendations?
Staff has reviewed the conditions actually with the property owner via phone call recently. He unfortunately wasn't even aware that this was coming to Plan Commission. And so there seems to be a little bit of a lack of a conversation going on between the oil company and the property owner, but we did get this worked out so that it still could be on the agenda. So the property owner did approve for this to be on the agenda tonight, but said he would not be available for questions.
All right, so I mean, I would be.
Did the property owner have any comments or questions on the staff recommendations, or have they even read the report?
He did read the report.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an interesting discovery. But yes, he has read the report. I also verbally went through all the conditions with him as well.
And was there any feedback, I guess?
His feedback was more just the shock that there was something going to Plan Commission for his property without him really fully being aware of it. So.
Okay, interesting.
I'll make a motion to approve per staff's recommendations. A second.
A motion and a second. Commissioner Strelchak.
So staff's recommendations, just in summary, is what the applicant asked for minus the koala signs?
Yes, and a small reduction of the amount of signage as well.
And the easement.
And the easement.
And the easement.
And the easement, yes.
The awnings in...
For the canopy, the car wash
blue,
canopy.
Not bright red. And then...
No yellow at the car wash?
Yeah. Making sure the car wash matches the principal structure.
Correct.
Commissioner Jensis.
Question for maybe both staff and the applicant. The changes that staff is recommending, are they consistent with what ExxonMobil has for its signage and fascia, et cetera?
You were on the email, Wayne, as well as the property owner.
My guess is there's probably a standard template that they have, but there's so many different municipalities that they have different rules that they're going to have to adjust accordingly. But that would be my...
Correct. And just to let you know, too, that we have another setup like this at the corner of Wauwatosa Road and Mequon Road. They've also installed the same structures on it.
With signage?
With signage.
Consistent in the manner in which we're approving this one?
No. In fact, that one, we, for some reason, did not understand the amount of signage that was going to be included on those in that proposal. And so that's why this is being handled in a different manner.
Okay. So this is the new look for mobiles across the country.
Correct.
Were there awnings? What were the awnings painted at that location, or are there no awnings?
Sure. And then in that location, for Wauwatosa Road, we did request that there was 2 blue awnings installed on that building as well. The face of that building was a little bit on the flat side and didn't have any color incorporated it, much like this.
So it's consistent with that?
Correct.
Okay. That's important for us to understand too.
Sure.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second to approve the staff's recommendations. I'm assuming that if we pass it and the applicant here doesn't agree with the recommendations, otherwise they will come back.
That's my thinking.
Okay. Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's passed as per staff's recommendations. Thank you. And our last item. Eastbrook Drive LLC. The applicant is seeking zoning recommendation approval to allow for a modification to the PUD to allow for 10 units instead of 8 for the properties located at Lot 2 behind 11649 North Fort Washington Road. I see Jack's up.
Yes.
Take it away, Jack.
So this is a request to rezone the existing PUD, which I will show you in a second. Let me just clear out some of the stuff on the screen. So some of you may recall back in 2018, this land, and I guess I'm going to show you kind of where this is at, just so you understand. So this is Lexington Square right here in this location, and these are condominiums from Eastbrook behind them. This area right here was originally meant to be phase 3 of this office park. In 2018, they requested a rezoning of this land to a residential with a maximum number of units of 8. There was 2 3-unit buildings and a 6-unit building, which I have a picture for you right here. So this basically was what was originally approved in 2018. 3 units along this line, 3 units here, 2 units here. There were several other conditions that were part of the PUD that were not in place because the applicant didn't go forward with the request. So the current request is to change the number of units from 8 to 10 units, and these will be all side-by-side units, which is more consistent with the character of the area. I'll bring up that plan in a second. So the changes that we're looking at from the 2018 plan include, again, 4 units up here, 2 buildings, 2 building here, and then there's also small, like a maintenance garage in this location here. So the density meets the code requirement for the district, which would be about 11 units. So they're still underneath the required density of the R6. They meet all the conditions of the PUD as well as the R6 base zoning. There's one exception. They're requesting 15 feet between buildings. The previous approval was 30. That's kind of a holdover from our days when we didn't have city water. Building code allows you to go down to about 10 feet for fire separation. So 15 feet, we're supportive of that. There are a couple of things that we kind of dealt with last time that we didn't fully address, which was resulting in some of the access changes. So one of the engineering requirements is to shift this driveway a little bit further south to keep it away from this median area. And there's also a plan in here that I had a conversation with our city engineer, rather spirited conversation at times. I was trying to save some of these trees that are located in this area. Right now they're showing one entranceway here with a frontage road basically to serve this unit. There is this is the access point for Astor Woods right here, so there is a little bit of an intersection there. Trying to get a potential road connection over here for these two, and then have this one for this one to save a little pocket in the middle. Not sure if it's going to work out. We're still kind of in discussion on that, but that's something we can further flush out as we go forward when they come back for either preliminary plat if it's a condominium unit or building site plan if they're going to be rentals. So we're looking at the opportunity to kind of look at that a little bit further as we go forward. Other than that, we do recommend approval. They did show some potential concept plans in the packet. As a reminder, those will come back to the commission as well if this gets approved by the council for the rezoning, and then ultimately the final approval of these buildings will go through our architectural review board. So with that, we do recommend approval of the PUD amendment according to the conditions of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? I think it looks great.
Just, sorry. Could you elaborate or just explain again about this southerly driveway?
Sure. Let me try to, actually, I'll pull it up on the map, probably be a little bit more clear for you. So there's a median right in this look. It's under, you can't really see one of these, but there's a median coming here. The driveway locations here, engineering has a concern about a little bit of a conflict point for cars flowing in each direction. So they wanted to shift it down off that median. So it's in roughly this location here, about 50 feet over to the south. And that was a condition. There was a similar condition at the time of the 2018, but again, since the developer at the time didn't go forward, nothing really changed with that access point.
So the discussion then is showing something a little different than what we're seeing.
Well, no, they're actually showing their plan is similar to what was shown back in 2018, but again, there was a condition even of that plan to relocate that a little bit. So we're just looking to move that a little bit, and we could flush the good details.
This is to consider the rezoning, and the site plan will come back.
Yeah, this is concept plan, so we can make tweaks to it.
Yeah.
Can I say one?
Sure, go ahead.
Certainly. Tony Zanon from Pinnacle Engineering Group. I was here with the previous developer in 2018, and we will come back and site plan and talk about that. But when we first came in, we had West Eastbrook Drive for those that were involved. We had a straight shot into our subdivision or into our development, and much debate at Plan Commission, and everyone felt that at night or in winter conditions, people would continue to go straight, thinking that was the road versus the curve. So therefore, we added that curve to it, and the intent was to get south of that median, which is what we did, and kind of keep it at that location versus going further along that curve. The request or the comment right now is to move it 50 foot to the south, which is going to put us right on the sign for the adjacent condominium development. Plus, we're also going to be further down on that curve. So we will definitely talk to staff about that. We did see it, but I just, if we went back in the minutes of 2018, you'll see that there was a lot of discussion at Plan Commission about where that drive should be and sight lines and different things like that. So we will definitely deal with staff on that.
So are you saying the 50 foot won't work? Sure?
I'm not saying it won't work. I think our location with the curve as it's shown on the screen now was talked about at Plan Commission. That's what we came up with. I've got, again, some sightline exhibits and different things that we did in 2018 to show this would be the best location. There is a sign that if we move the driveway 50 feet south, if anybody drives, there's a monument sign for the adjacent condominium development that road would be in, and obviously costs. If we don't remove it, it's going to be some visual issues.
And I just checked, it's not an actual condition for the 50 feet, so we have some play there. Again, this is concept plan, so we do have some ability to tweak that going forward.
Okay. Commissioner Strelchak.
Just a little feedback on that. I like where it was. I think drivers are going to be in the apex of their turn at speed when they're going to see the other vehicle in the driveway shifting that back 50 feet. And my concern is hitting your brakes at speed in slippery conditions is what puts you either into that other driver or the ditch, in that situation. So as long as line of sight for them doesn't have the traffic going right down their road, and then they've got easy in and easy out on that boulevard, and people can see them ideally from whichever direction, I'd be comfortable with.
Yeah, I think we can work it out. And another thing we want to kind of avoid going further south is there's a big berm there. We don't want to cut into that as well. So we got to find a sweet spot there. Yeah. And I'm confident we can work it out.
Trust you to figure it out.
I'm hearing what I was hoping to hear.
Okay.
In terms of.
Before we get to public comments, any more questions from the commissioners? We can come back if we have some. I see someone raise their hand from the public. Sir, would you wish to speak? Come up to the microphone and state your name and address.
Bernie Burson, 1521 Eastbrook Drive. Question about the drive into the new subdivision come off of our south entrance. Currently, our south entrance is used mainly for exit of the subdivision. So that would create a two-way again. Is that understandable, Jack?
You're talking about down in here? Lower loop, or that's a two-way street though right now, right? Primarily it's used for people going up.
Primarily a two-way street, but 99% of the cars exit that way to go out onto Port Washington Road. They come in on the north road, which has got the stoplight, and we exit basically on the south road.
Yeah, I think that situation will continue for the development here. These residents will come out and leave this way. They'll come back in this way, but they won't go any further this way. So I don't see anybody going further west along that road. So I don't see the traffic pattern changing too much there.
Okay, now these are side by side two families, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and the value of them will be close to what we have in Eastbrook and in Astor Woods?
We haven't gotten that far, but I assume just with construction costs, you're probably going to be looking at equal to or greater. That'll come forward when we flush out the building design, and when that comes back in front of Planning Commission at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have one more wishing to speak. Come up to the podium, please. State your name and address and make your comments.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Rothstein. I live at 1556 West Astor Woods Court. And I don't have any preconceived notions about this or any disposition for or against it, except for one word that I did hear come up at the very end. And I'm assuming that this will be addressed later on when you talk about zoning for this property. The word rentals was mentioned. Now, if I want to rent out my individual condominium unit in Astor Woods, that's between me and the association and my rules. But I would want to know if there's going to be public input on whether or not these are going to be built as rentals, or are they built as single-family owner-occupied residences? Is this a zoning issue that'll be addressed later?
It's actually against Wisconsin law to legislate based off of whether it's owner-occupied or rental. We're basing it off the land use. And the land use is the same no matter whether it's a single-family renter or a single-family owner.
I think you're misunderstanding my question. Certainly, if you build an apartment building, you build it as an apartment building, as a rental apartment building. Similarly, I'm asking, when will that issue come up? Will these be managed by a management company as rentals, where you rent from a central administrative office? And I understand that that's a question, that's what I'm asking, that's a question that's going to be taken up later. You're talking about the use of the property now, but what's the mechanism for discussing the latter?
Again, the mayor is correct. We cannot dictate ownership, so these will be side-by-side units, whether they could be a condominium, but even if they're condominiums, they still could be rentals. They could
I acknowledge that when I first made my comments.
We can't say whether they can be rentals or not. That issue won't be coming back forward in front of us because we're not allowed to legislate based on that.
Yeah, we can dictate the land use, but not whether it's owner occupied or renter occupied. It's 100% not our purview.
And has there been anything filed with regard to the costs of construction of these units?
Nothing as of yet, no.
We can legislate on square footage too.
I think it meets all the other standards for this district.
Yeah, when we go forward with the building design, we'll make sure that they have the same quality materials of all the other units. They'll be similar in size, as the other units. So
yeah, we're not going to compromise on the things we require of every other development.
Correct.
Any further comments or questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve per staff's recommendations.
Second.
Third. Motion and a second. Any further questions? Are we all good with this? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. That brings us, get back to the top of the agenda here.
Announcements.
We have any announcements? Next meeting is the 12th of December.
We also have that special meeting on the 5th. I just want to remind everyone at Foxtown Building D.
Oh, it's true. That's it's not on here, but yeah, the Foxdown, the Zimmerman Hall,
Yes.
correct?
Seven.
Along the train tracks on the
Yes.
5th.
What's that? 7th? 7th, yes, correct. Yeah,
7th.
the Wednesday.
Wednesday? Okay.
We'll send you out another reminder email.
It is on Wednesday, so it would be the 7th. Thank you for that correction. Okay, that brings us to item number 5. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.